So I'll be talking about standardized testing. I'm Emily Lada and I'm in Education 1301 VO1. So what is standardized testing? A standardized test is any form of test that one, requires all test takers to answer the same questions, or a selection of questions from a same bank, or in the same way, or in the same subject. And that is two scored in a standard or consistent manner, which makes it possible to compare the performance of individual students or a group of students. So it's usually if there's a set mark or no test is going to be harder than the other, each student would get the same type of test. This is to be able to collect data of the schools or districts or even the state easier. So my research question, should standardized testing be required? It is very common for every country and every state to have standardized testing. However, people have been questioning whether standardized testing is beneficial or not and should still be required. So standardized testing pros, it holds people accountable. For both students and teachers, standardized testing has been a way to ensure that everyone's held accountable, especially teachers. The teachers are required to be able to teach the students the whole subject and have the students master that subject in time for the end of state exam or the standardized tests. And so because of that, usually administration or school districts would have teachers do benchmarks or CVAs during the year to ensure that students are being kept up and they're learning the information given to throughout the year. Standardized tests are useful metrics for teacher evaluations. Individual school administrations, school districts, and state can compare teachers using test scores to show how each teacher has helped students master core concepts. So this goes with holding teachers accountable. This school district wants to see which teachers are helping the students master the core concepts and how easily and how quickly. Another pro is standardized tests can offer teachers bonuses, merits, acknowledgments, such recognitions. Depending on the school district's administration, teachers may be qualified for merits such bonus depending if the students are high performing on the standardized tests. So, like how I said before, if you're held accountable, if the teachers are held accountable, then the school district will know which teachers are performing in the right way. And so because of that, in some districts or states, they can be even qualified for bonuses or merits. Or if your state does not allow it, you'll still get the acknowledgments such recognitions from your campus. And usually you'll be labeled as a high performing teacher. And because of that, that can do well for a teacher, especially if they're trying to grow in the district or grow in the class. And this can be used as for them being labeled as a high performing teacher. Standardized testing cons. Opponents of standardized testing say educators have become too fixated on scores. I'm preparing for these exams. Some of the most common arguments against testing are it's inflexible and it's a waste of time. Some students may excel in the classroom, yet they're unable to perform well on the tests because they're unfamiliar with the format or they develop test anxiety. The test doesn't take in consideration mental health, physical health, what's going on with your family, any language barriers that can affect the student's score. The test only measures what the student performs on that day. It's a waste of time. Standardized testing causes many teachers to teach to the test, meaning they only spend instructional time on the material that will appear. Opponents say this lacks creativity and can hinder the student's overall learning potential. It is known that each student has a different type of learning. So if the teacher is only focusing on being able to have the students do well on the exam, that means that is only one type of learning skill. Teachers will most likely stick to the pencil and paper method because they want to ensure the student will be able to do well on that exam. However, that only helps a bit of students. Not all students can learn well with only the pen and paper method. Some students need a video, some students need to be hands-on in the subject, and so because of this, it lacks creativity, and not all students are going to be able to learn in this way. Another couple of cons is it can measure true progress. Standardized testing only evaluates a one-time performance. So if your student has been a low performing in the very beginning, however, uh, they have made great progress throughout the year, however, that progress is still not meeting the standardized test, it will still show that the student has failed. And so because of that, the test doesn't take into consideration that the student has grown at all. It says if it's a fail, it's a fail. It's stressful. Teachers and students alike feel this test is stressful. For educators, poor students' performance may result in the loss of funding or a teacher being fired. For students, a bad test score may mean missing on admission to a college or being held back. They always say end of time year, at the end of the school year, it's a very stressful thing. It's a very stressful time for teachers and students. Students are usually cramming for tests, being scared they may not pass, or being scared they may have to go to remedial classes in the summer or have to retake them. And teachers, this is one way for them to be held accountable. And if they feel as though their students aren't performing where they should be, even close to the end of the year, the teacher will have a lot of stress and thinking they may be fired. It's political. With public and charter schools both competing for the same public funds, politicians and educators have come to rely even more on the standardized test scores. Some low-performing schools are unfairly targeted by politicians who use academic performances as an excuse to further on their own agendas. Usually, a politician or maybe even, uh, for example, presidents, they always must bring up education, as education is a very important topic. However, sometimes their agendas or their plans to better help students, it has not really done much help. And it may even be seen as a target, or it may be seen as they're targeting only low performing schools, which also doesn't take in consideration if the school has well performing students or if the school is growing. So, in my opinion, I believe that standardized testing should not be used in a way to fail or fire students. I believe it's important to use the test to evaluate the student's performance. However, I don't feel as though it should be used to hinder students. So standardized testing evaluates the students based on their performance at the specific moment in time. On the specific day, we do not consider any factors. So because the standardized test only looks at that student's performance on that one day, it's not considering any of the factors of a student that may be going through anxiety, home problems, stress, or health issues. And so because of this, we should not use the standardized testing as a fail or pass method, because these are only a few factors that could affect the student's ability to focus. These types of factors affect the student's performance differently and thus impacts them unfairly. A student can be a very high performing, however, they feel sick that day. How can we ensure that the student will be perform well? And because of this, does the student still have to face the consequences of not performing well and have to go to those remedial classes or stay in the summer to make up the work or to retake the tests? And then teachers are teaching to the test. According to, this is a quote, according to W. James Coleman, American teachers are feeling enormous pressure these days to raise their students' scores on high stakes tests. As a consequence, some teachers are providing classroom instruction that incorporates mainly assessment related content and questions. So this goes against learning, having our kids learn day-to-day problems. Um, A teacher will probably stay away from that, especially if they don't feel confident that they'll get enough of the academic or the instruction from to the test. They will only focus on what's going to be on the test. They won't be having many creative moments or being able to discuss to students world to world problems because they don't feel like it will be on the test. Other skills and concepts that may have been considered important at one time or to someone are often overlooked, not considered relevant, and are often pushed to the bottom of the list. So the student will most likely learn the best with the pen and paper method, especially since the teacher will enforce it because that's how you take the standardized test. So because of that, the student won't develop other creative skills, hands-on methods, thinking outside the box, or using other materials. They'll be more comfortable with pen and paper, which is not very common as they grow older or go into a workforce. As you can see in the picture, I see you did well in school, but what real world skills do you have? Tests. I can take tests, especially pen and paper. And then what about our students' progress? Standardized tests evaluate the student based on their performance at a specific moment in time. This form of testing does not tell us how far the student has come day one. It doesn't tell us the gaps. It doesn't tell us specific learning that the student was able to attain during the course of the year. It only tells us if the student passed or failed and if they meet a certain criteria, like if they performed in a very high performing level or if they barely passed. Usually this doesn't help students if they were very low and then they were able to improve throughout the year. If they still didn't meet that score for the standardized test to be considered passing, it is still a fail to the school. And so who supports standardized tests? The Biden administration. Recently, the Biden administration pushed for standardized tests to continue. So even though our states, the states we're in right now, and it's proven that students are still not learning as well as they were when they were in person school, the Biden administration has still said they want to make sure to take the standardized tests, which holds the teachers and students accountable. Is this a hard thing that most people feel? Yes, especially since a lot of people don't feel confident in the online schooling method still. Another person who supports standardized testing is Aaron Churchill. Aaron Churchill is an Ohio researcher director for Thomas B. Foreman Institute, where he has worked in 2012. He released a study in 2015 about the reasons for standardized tests, and it's called Blast the Test. And the key points are objectivity, comparability, and accountability. Making sure to hold everyone accountable. And these are my sources cited. Any questions? You can find me at emilyaaronlada@gmail.com. And thank you.